it's very hard to deal with. It's been times where I couldn't move, couldn't walk, you know, so I've had my ups and downs with this illness. It's really tough.
That's Leigh Johnson, a groundskeeper who took on agricultural giant Monsanto and won. For decades, there's been debate about whether their weed killer, Roundup, can cause cancer. After Johnson got cancer a few years ago, he took Monsanto to court, and in August, he won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And now claims that documents which came to light in that trial suggest Monsanto misled people about the possible risk of cancer. They're called the Monsanto Papers, and some of the studies in them were used by the Canadian government when it decided Roundup was safe for Canadians to use. As a result of reporting done by our colleagues at Radio-Canada's Enquête, Health Canada is now saying it will review the science upon which it made that decision. We'll tell you about that and hear from Johnson himself in a moment. But first, some background on Roundup. The important thing here is a chemical ingredient called glyphosate. It's the most widely used herbicide in the world and has made Monsanto billions of dollars. But then in 2015, the World Health Organization, the body responsible for cancer research, announced that glyphosate is probably carcinogenic to humans. In other words, it can probably cause cancer. Monsanto, acquired by Bayer earlier this year, disagrees and says there is an extensive body of research on glyphosate, including more than 800 rigorous registration studies that confirm that these products are safe when used as directed. Back in 2017, Health Canada reviewed the science and ruled that glyphosate is unlikely to pose a human cancer risk and allowed its ongoing use. For some Canadian environmental groups, Leigh Johnson's lawsuit accusing Monsanto of causing his cancer was a goldmine of information. They've been pouring through the so-called Monsanto Papers and say they found internal Monsanto emails that show company scientists ghostwrote key scientific studies that Health Canada relied on when it approved the use of glyphosate in Canada in 2017. One group, Equiterre, says Monsanto is intentionally covering up conflicts of interests by lying about the authorship of these papers on the cancer risk of glyphosate. Elaine McDonald is with another environmental group called Eco-Justice. I spoke with her a couple of days ago and asked her what her group discovered when they started looking through the Monsanto Papers.
What we discovered is that some of the scientific studies that have been cited in the Monsanto Papers as having been ghost-written by Monsanto or ghost-edited by Monsanto were actually studies that the Health Canada relied on when they made the decision to register glyphosate for another 15 years in Canada.
So what's wrong with that if something's been
what's wrong with that is we need to know when science is independent and when science is potentially been influenced by vested interests such as industry. In this case, these papers were put forward as independent scientific papers, and what the Monsanto Papers have revealed is that's not the case. There have actually been sections of those papers that were, or even entire papers that were written by Monsanto scientists.
You have argued that Health Canada was inappropriately influenced by this Monsanto science. What would be the implication of that? What does that mean?
Well, much of the many of the papers that were ghostwritten by Monsanto were papers about the risk of cancer from exposure to glyphosate. So the implication is that Health Canada may have underestimated or perhaps not evaluated the risk of cancer the way they would have if they had not been ghostwritten by Monsanto. That is a potential implication.
That's a pretty profound implication.
Yes, it is. It is, very much so.
So are you saying that the science is bad?
We don't know if the science is bad, and that's why we're asking the minister to strike an investigation, a panel to investigate these issues. We have no idea if they actually changed the science or if they just changed the papers in terms of how they describe the science. But a panel would be able to look into that of independent experts, and that's really what we need to happen now, to look into this further.
Elaine McDonald, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We took those concerns to Health Canada, and on Friday, big news, they are now going to review their decision, telling CBC that due to these troubling allegations, Health Canada scientists are currently conducting a review of the hundreds of studies used to approve glyphosate. Health Canada says the process should be completed in the coming weeks. The environmental groups say this is good news, but they're still asking for an independent review. We also contacted Bayer and were told It has an unwavering commitment to sound science and to transparency and has not sought to influence science outcomes in any way. And that the company's sponsorship of scientific research is disclosed in each article. It's still not clear who exactly wrote which papers, but it's all not much consolation for someone like Leigh Johnson, whose doctors tell him he doesn't have much longer to live. Here's a little more on his mission to warn people about Roundup.
For y'all that don't know, I am an integrated pest manager / groundsman. I get dirty every day. Some day I have clean days, sometimes I have dirty days. Today is one of those wet, dirty days, right?
Leigh Johnson was proud of his job as a groundskeeper at several schools around San Francisco. Part of the job was spraying weed killers made by Monsanto, such as Roundup and Ranger Pro. He says there were no health warnings on the labels and that he was told it was safe enough to drink. Still, Johnson wore protective gear while spraying up to 30 times a year, up to 150 gallons a day. But he still got it on his skin. One day, a hose came loose, spraying chemicals inside his suit, and a few months later, a rash developed over his entire body. He said the rash got worse and worse. Johnson called Monsanto and says he spoke to a woman who sounded like she was reading from a script. She told him someone would follow up with them, but they never did. He started digging and learned from a supervisor there were studies linking glyphosate, a key ingredient in the Monsanto weed killers he'd been using, to cancer. He said he felt totally betrayed. Finally, in 2014, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. In 2016, Johnson became the first person to take Monsanto to trial on allegations that it had hidden the cancer risks of its herbicide for decades. In 2018, he became the first to win.
Was failure to warn a substantial factor in causing harm to Mr. Johnson? Answer, yes. Did you find by clear and convincing evidence that Monsanto acted with malice or oppression? Answer, yes.
Bayer has said, "We continue to believe that the liability verdict and damage awards are not supported by the evidence at trial." It says it plans to appeal the ruling. For now, though, Leigh Johnson is the man who beat Monsanto, the groundskeeper who took on a multi-billion-dollar corporation and won. He was awarded $289 million in damages, later dropped to $78 million. Meanwhile, Johnson is covered in lesions, sometimes so painful he can't be in the sun. Some days, even fabric touching his skin is too much to bear. At 46, doctors have now given him 2 years to live. His wife and 2 young sons are devastated. Johnson says this was never about the money. It was always about protecting others from what happened to him. And joining me now is Leigh Johnson. Thanks so much for talking to us. I just want to get a sense of what you think that the Roundup did to you. Like, what effect has having that cancer had on your life?
It's had a tremendous effect. I mean, even from my first lesion or my first little mark, out from there, it just really got really bad. It's been times where I couldn't move, couldn't walk, you know, so I've had my ups and downs with this illness. It's really tough.
Your doctors have told you that you're going to die.
Right.
And yet here you are, still fighting, trying to spread a message. What is it that's driving you? What do you want to accomplish here?
To see the positive energy that came from so many people and so many people that had other, you know, things that happened to them or family members, they were affected by NHL or, you know, exposed to chemicals too, and they have their stories and they bring it to me, and it's like, wow, you know, it's really incredible. You know, that people approach you crying or saying things and sharing their story, that gives me a whole new drive, you know, a real push to push for the people now, you know.
Now the company's still saying that it's safe. Is it true that you were told that it was safe enough to drink Roundup?
More than once.
Really?
Yeah, more than once. I even seen a video about that too. And then it was a trainer that used to come out and train us, you know, from a local company where we used to buy the product from. And that was, you know, but, you know, that's been said for years, you know, that was a part of it. But, hey, hopefully they will stop that, you know, because that's not funny and that's not cute.
You know that Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, is arguing that their product is safe, that it doesn't cause cancer, that was just the opinion of the jury in that case, and that it's completely safe. So do you feel you're having any impact?
They're a company that has to protect their company, right? If they were to roll over and say, you know what, Mr. Johnson, we're sorry, here it is, here's your cash, we're sorry, we're gonna change the label, and we're gonna do what you want to try to make this right. I don't think that they can do that, because then they lose everything and their, company crumbles, and the rest of the lawsuits have to be settled also. So as a company, they have to fight, they have to appeal, and that's their legal right. So it is what it is. They have to do what they have the right to do. So.
But what do you think of that? I mean, you're in the situation that you're in now, you believe because of their product, and they're still saying, oh no, it's safe, it doesn't cause cancer.
It's their right. That's the way I feel about it. It's their right to fight, the same way I had the right to fight. So even sitting there in court, I saw a real battle. It was a real tough court battle,
You're very humble, but you must be kind of proud to see that you've won this case and you're making this difference.
I'm not easily excited or agitated, but yeah, it's hard to take in sometimes. And I sit down sometime when I'm alone and I think like, this is really big, or, is this really happening, So it's happening, and I'm dealing with it. And I think the people around me have helped a lot, My kids have helped a lot. I have two really solid little boys, and those boys, they keep me on the right plane, because it's, I don't have time to really just, even being out here, it was, a lot of planning that had to go into me coming out here because of, my football and things, with my kids, I'm a part of those things, when I'm healthy, like, can move around and do things. It's a program every day. So, yeah.
It's been so great to talk to you.
Thank you.